if you've got your test coming up and you're worried about how you'll handle the nerves or whether it's going to really affect you on your driving test, then stay tuned. So if you're like the majority of people that get quite nervous when it comes to the driving test, and the thought of taking that driving test is going to affect you, because if you cast your mind back to the beginning of your driving lessons and how you drove in that first lesson, did the nerves affect you then? Were your hands shaking? Were your legs shaking? Were you getting all hot and sweaty? And if you was, then you're probably going to be similar on your driving test, unfortunately. But there are things you can do to kind of help yourself. Remind yourself at this point that you can drive, because that's one of the things you need to remember, is that you actually can drive compared to as you were on the first lesson. The first lesson was nerves because you don't know what to expect and you couldn't control a car that weighed nearly half a ton in weight. Now you can control the car that weighs half a ton in weight, but you don't know what to expect and it's a stranger in the car. So that's what makes you feel nervous. And the pressure also of having to perform, having to do exactly the right things without getting a serious or danger on the driving test, and back of your mind knowing that if you do fail, it's a bit difficult to get a quick driving test. That's all the added pressure, and it does make it a bit harder. And because of COVID, there's also that pressure where if you know you've got a serious, you're going to go back at the test centre within 5 or 10 minutes, which is so disheartening when you've worked so hard. And I've seen it happen. I've been sending my students off on the driving test, and 10 minutes later they turn back up, and as they turn in, you know they failed the test at that point, and it's so upsetting for them. And for me, you think, oh God, what have they failed for? And it's always something silly in the first few minutes, and nerves plays a big part of that. It really does. It really does. Because if you're nervous, you're going to do something rash in the first few minutes. You're going to rush, or you're going to take a risk, and you've got to kind of rein it in and not take risks, basically, and not drive like a granny, but drive sensibly. And that's the key to kind of controlling them nerves. Because I say to lots of people, bring a banana along, bring a bottle of water along, so that it helps to kind of control these things. But you can do things. You can kind of reenact the situation of being on the driving test. You can do mock driving tests with your instructor, and that's a really good indicator of how you're going to cope. Because if you've never done a mock driving test, and just say a month before your driving test and everything's going fine, then ask for a mock driving test, and you'll be surprised you'll drive pretty badly in that mock driving test, and you'll do something completely stupid that you've never done before, like stalling or trying to pull off in the wrong gear. So it reminds you, and that's something you can go away and work on with your instructor at the same time. And also, the experience of the driving test will actually help you too. Now, if you're never sure what actually happens on the driving test, then I'll put a link at the top of what's going to happen from start to finish on a driving test, so you can watch that if you need to. But having a mock driving test is a good idea, because it identifies some of the weak areas that maybe your instructor didn't spot. Because I've seen it. I thought I've got someone fantastically ready for the driving test, do a mock test, and all of a sudden they're trying to pull off in third gear, or they're approaching a junction too fast for some reason. And it could be that it's a little lack of understanding or nerves making them do it. And when they've had a couple of mock tests, you'll find that you'll cope better with the scenario of a driving test, and you kind of know what sort of things your instructor is going to do to you. Like they're going to ask you to pull over, they're going to ask you to move off, they're going to ask you to do a manoeuvre, all these sort of things. And it's all crammed into 40 minutes, where if you're having a 2-hour lesson, it's kind of spread out nice and smooth. So you'll have a bit of an intense area where you'll do a manoeuvre or two for 10-15 minutes, and then you'll do some driving round. Where on a driving test, it's like wham, 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 loads of things after the other. And it's like, whew, that's a lot of going on. So it's being prepared for it that helps you. And there's other things you can do to help you prepare for them nerves. Like I say, having mock tests is what I recommend. Getting a good night's sleep a couple of days before your test every night to kind of build your stamina up, because it does drain your energy. When you're getting nervous, all of a sudden it saps that energy from your body, and you start to feel tired. And you don't want to kind of underperform. Another little tip for you that will help you: if you're having 1-hour driving lessons, and you've got your test, which is 40 minutes, so you're going to be an hour at a test centre in total. So it's going to be parking up 5 minutes, 40 minutes for the test, that makes 45 minutes, 5 minutes for the debrief, that makes 15 minutes. So it's not for half an hour, is it? So if you're only doing an hour lesson normally, then what you don't want to do is have an hour before your driving test, because what's going to happen is you're going to do really well in that first hour, and then you're going to underperform on the driving test because you're going to get tired. So my biggest tip I'll give to you at this point would be, if you're doing 1 hour lessons constantly week in, week out, either increase your lessons to an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours, that's even better, leading up to your driving test, because you'll get more out of it at the same time. And if that's not possible, then your instructor's probably going to say to you, well, you need to book 2 hours because we need to get to test centre. It's going to be 15, 20 minutes away. So what I would do then is obviously book the 2 hour lesson and get your instructor to drive you towards a test centre, so you're not doing all the hard work. And then about 15 minutes before you test, do the driving. So you kind of get a little bit of driving in, so you don't feel rushed for 15 minutes, and then straight away you're into your driving test, and that'll help you also. So that'll help you calm you down at the same time. And I suppose having a different mindset also, because if you're thinking, oh, it's a stranger in the car, don't think like that. Think, right, okay then, the instructor's off today, they're not well, I've got his best friend in, or his friend in, who's not very smiley kind of thing. So that person next to me is the instructor's stand-in kind of thing. Think like that, so it kind of relaxes the thing a little bit more. And remember, examiners are only human. You know, they'll talk to you a little bit. They'll do a little bit of small talk to you. So when you're introduced at the beginning, they're going to chat to you for a minute or two while they're asking you the questions on doing your eyesight test. So you'll get to know them a little bit more. And there's also going to be a minute or two at the beginning when they'll say to you, would you like me to explain the driving test before we start? Yes, please. Get used to the voice. And straight away, you might hit it off with them. Or you might not, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's down to how chatty you are. But once the driving test starts, obviously, at that point, you're there to drive. So concentrate on your driving and do your best. But like I say, along the way, whether in the first few minutes or 5 minutes into the driving test, the examiner, don't be surprised if the examiner says to you, so what do you do for a living, or are you at college or a student? So all they're doing, a little bit of small talk to kind of relax you a little bit, and that's just normal, and that'll help you. And just keep remembering that that person next to you is your stand-in for your instructor. Think like that. That'll help also. And then there's other things you can do. Like I say, I talk about eating the right things. So don't kind of spoil your routine before your driving test. So if your driving test is at midday or in the afternoon, and you won't feel like eating sometimes, eat like normal. Have your breakfast, have your lunch, and kind of have the right food that you normally have. Don't kind of start going, oh, my belly's grumbling, I'm starving, because that's just going to make you feel worse on your driving test, isn't it? So eat the correct food that you normally eat, and at the same time, bring a little bottle of water along. And I do say to people, bring a banana along at the same time. Some people prefer mints. There's rescue remedies, that herbal remedies to put on, I think, tablets or spray or something on your tongue. Now, I wouldn't personally recommend doing that on the day of your driving test, because I have heard stories where people say, oh, it didn't really affect me, or it made me feel tired. So if you're going to try that side of things by trying to help calm you down, I think they call them calms, then what you want to do is try it a few weeks before you test, see how you feel, because last thing you want to do is try it for the first time when you're driving test and it really throws you sideways, or it makes you feel ill kind of thing. Oh, I don't feel well. So try these things before the driving test, okay? Good luck on the test. I'm hoping these few little bit of advice helps you. If it does, fantastic, and safe driving. And remember, if you don't pass, you can always retake the test.